Hello everyone and welcome to the VRRC Audi TT Cup Championship powered by 10/10 Coaching. It's the first round for us, of course, broadcast by Simply Race. My name is Jack Oliphant and I'm very pleased to be with Steve Proudley. And for once, Steve, I'm not introducing to your own sort of sim group. We're commentating on an exciting TT Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to have crossed over into a different paddock for a change, and looking forward to seeing these TTs blast around the Nurburgring tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. The Nurburgring GP is, of course, the venue that we're at tonight, and it's going to bring up some absolutely cracking racing, I'm sure, as well. It would be sort of very quick and sort of quick chicane, and quite good overtaking opportunities into a few hairpins. The first corner is a good note as well, Steve, isn't it? But it's quite easy to defend in the second and third corner.
Yeah, absolutely. The first corner's is a corner of two lines because just if you find yourself on the outside there, it's still worth holding that line because obviously it puts you on the inside as you go into the Mercedes arena, and quite often you see cars finding excessive amounts of grip out there. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, the first corner, and I'm sure when these cars are barreling off the start line, the first 260 metres into that first corner will be interesting.
It certainly will. And speaking of the drivers, we've got 15 of the finest SimSport racers around, and we've got some brilliant 15-minute races, two 15-minute races, haven't we, Steve? It's certainly going to be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean they obviously they've got the push to pass on these cars as well, which they can use 15 times in any one race, which gives them, I'm told, approximately 50 brake horsepower more, and can shave, if it's used correctly on a lap, it can shave probably around about a second a lap off. So that's another thing to throw into the excitement.
It will be indeed, and obviously we've got a sort of a reverse grid style thing as well, where we've got 12 reverse grids, and obviously we've got ballast on board as well. So after the first race, the top driver, the driver who wins the overall race, will get 30 kilograms of ballast on board. Second place, 27, third place, 24, and down like that, down to 10th position. And I think we can bring in Dave. Well, we will be able to bring in one of the organisers, Dave Marshall, in a little bit as well. But the ballast, it's not going to be absolutely massive, is it? We're not going to see people sort of not being able to challenge for the lead if they won the previous race.
No. I mean, I think again, with the push to pass system in place, with the ballast, the slipstream effect of the cars, and just the general nature. And obviously, let's not forget these cars are on a fixed setup as well. So the drivers are very limited to what they can adjust. I think they can only actually adjust things that are in the car. So like real world ABS, traction control, brake bias, and brake power. I think that is all they can adjust.
Yeah, which will make some seriously sort of driver-heavy racing action, basically, as well. It's not all about the mechanics who has the best car or anything. It's all about who can hustle these Audi TTs around the Nürburgring as quickly as possible. To give everybody a bit of a breakdown of the timetable, we are, of course, live now. We always go live at 8 o'clock for the next 4 weeks. I'll bring you the calendar in a minute. Qualifying has started. We'll do a little bit of interviews after qualifying. Race 1 should be at 8:15. After 15 minutes, we'll do a few more interviews. That's a 15-minute race. And then race 2 will happen at 9:25. That should, again, last 15 minutes. And we'll do a few more interviews, and we should all be wrapped up for 9 o'clock. So it's going to be a jam-packed schedule, but it's certainly going to be filled with absolute brilliant quality and hopefully some really good insights as well, Steve. We've got a few drivers to watch. We've been having a look at the practice times as well, and they've been going very quickly, very close to each other.
Yeah, I mean, some of the times they're not even a tenth. We're talking hundredths, and we've got a good mixture of some accomplished real-world drivers and some accomplished sim racers on the grid. So everything to play for, and I'm sure these guys are going to battle as hard as they do every time they come out on track.
They will indeed, and a few of those drivers to look out for. You can see the drivers on your screen at the moment going on their out lap, just trying to warm the tyres, make sure they get into the rhythm of the track, even though they have just been practicing, of course. Look out for the likes of Marshall, Smith and McIntyre. They were 3 of the top drivers in the practice session as well. Fairclough was up there as well, and Edmondson. So those are the drivers that we expect to see at the sharp end. Of course, Marshall was one of the organisers of the series as well. We'll hopefully get a chat with him at some point during this evening, if not the next 4 weeks, Steve. But it's gonna be very tight, just like you said. And with qualifying being so short, it's all about who can get that lap time in straight away, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think I'm right in saying there's no push to pass on the qualifying, so it is down to just driving ability and potentially hanging onto that car in front a little bit at the right time to get a slipstream. But I think the most important thing with these TTs is to be smooth, and with them being front-wheel drive as well, you need to really sort of try and stay off the curbs, or certainly the higher curbs, because obviously we all know once you start hitting curbs with front-wheel drive, it does tend to pull the car around a little bit.
It is indeed, and front-wheel drive is actually something I've never really been able to get the hang of, to be honest. I'm a bit of a rear-wheel drive connoisseur in the fact that I can just about keep it on the track. We've mentioned the calendar a little bit before as well, and obviously I said that we have four rounds. Basically, we're live for 4 weeks in a row. We're, of course, at the Nurburgring GP. Luke, we're at Brands Hatch GP next week, which I know is a personal favourite for a lot of racing drivers out there. Barcelona, the next one of the Moto layout, so Catalonia Moto layout, and Imola rounding out the championship. And I tell you what, for a short championship, Steve, they've picked some absolute corkers of tracks.
They've really shaken it up a little bit there. I mean, we're just talking about the push to pass, and here at the Nurburgring, I think the push to pass will be absolutely fantastic for the guys. Because let's not forget, when you get extra power in a front wheel drive car, it can soon cause understeer if you're using it at the wrong time, obviously coming out of corners and things. So I'm just thinking ahead to Brands Hatch. It's there might only be a couple of places there where they can actually use it, because obviously there's a lot of high speed twisty corners at Brands.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to think of anywhere that they can use it apart from going back onto the back section sort of thing. But it's certainly going to be a spectacle, that's for sure. Brands Hatch, a track I've actually raced in real life, and it is not easy to say the least. And these guys are going a lot quicker than I ever could. Having a look at the few timings on the screen now, Marshall is top of the order, but there is a good 5 seconds to Stapleford. We expect to see those gaps go down quite drastically, don't worry. So, race 1, 15 minutes. It's fairly representative of the qualifying, really, isn't it? But it's going to be action-packed. And with that push-to-pass system, some really early overtaking opportunity around Nürburgring. It probably is unlikely to see a lights-to-flag victory here today, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think we will at all, no, because, I mean, obviously, as we keep saying, the push to pass, the slipstream effect. And we were talking to Rich Hayden, one of the drivers, earlier on before we went live, and he was sort of commenting in some practice races the guys have done. If you start battling with these cars, you can soon be losing 1 to 2 seconds a lap even. So for other guys trying to catch you, if you throw into the mix the push to pass, they can really make some time up, and I expect to see some bunches this evening. I don't think just 1, 2 cars. I think we could have 3, 4 and even 5, 6 cars in a bunch.
Yeah, and it will provide brilliant racing, brilliant spectacle as well for all those watching at home, and hopefully it'll make our job even easier, because it's really easy to commentate over good racing. You just shout at the monitor a lot, Steve, don't you, as you've got plenty of experience at now. Rich Hayden, he's actually one of the most experienced drivers on the grid. We've got little notes about each driver, obviously, and on his note it says one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, and he really seems to be clicking well with this car. So do we expect him to maybe fighting for that top 10, top 5? Where do you expect to see him?
I think top 10 certainly, if not top 6 maybe. But obviously, I don't want to be rude to the rest of the grid, because there is a lot of talent on that grid, and you're really putting me on the spot there, to be fair, Jack.
I love to do that with my co-commentators. Throw them the hard ball straight away.
I mean, considering this is the first championship for these guys that I have commentated on. I've watched a few of these drivers quite regularly before, but with this car, track combination, all the different sort of skill sets on the track, it's going to be difficult to pick a winner. But yeah, Richie's certainly got the ability, I think, to be definitely in the top 6. That'd be my shout for Rich. I think top 6.
Yeah, I think I was being slightly unfair to you, Steve, there. I should probably keep that question to your own championship, shall we say, when you know the drivers a bit better. But we have got a fair whack of very talented drivers, as you were talking about before. I mean, I'm having a look on our driver info. Isaac Smith, 2019 Ford Fiesta champion as well, and he's a current mini challenge driver. So some real world pedigree in there as well. Jack Noller, he's new to the VRRC, but he's got plenty of experience on the sims. So again, the difference between real world drivers and sim racers, and you are obviously someone who's been very heavily involved in your own sorts of setup and mixing real world racers with sim racers. Do they sort of blend in quite nicely? Are they able to provide good racing as we would almost expect from them?
I think it's I think it's horses for courses, shall we say. I think some drivers do adapt to it really well, and some take a little bit longer than others. I won't say they never adapt, because we all know the beauty of sim racing is you can just practice as many laps as you want. It's not really costing you money like it does in the real world to keep banging the laps in. So I think that's the big difference between the two disciplines, is that the sim racers will literally put, as they have done for this championship, some of them have put up to 200, maybe more laps in practice. And I think that's the big difference. But yeah, definitely there are some very, very fast real-world drivers coming into the sim world, and going the other way as well, it has to be said.
I can only imagine being able to have 200 laps of practice in a real-world drive car. A real-world car. That would be absolutely madness. But yeah, you said it there. I mean, a set of tyres in the real world, if you go practicing on a new set of tyres, they can cost pretty much the same as most people's sim rigs, can't it? And obviously, a sim rig lasts pretty much forever, and a set of tyres only lasts about 10 laps if you're lucky in some respects. So it is a good cost-effective way for these drivers to get in, get some practice, and just get that thrill of racing as well.
Yeah, and I think the way that the sims have developed over the years, the last few years especially, we've had some great titles coming out. We've had some great updates for some current sims, and the physics and everything, and not to mention the hardware for your sims, the steering wheels, the pedals. That you do spend a lot of money on them, but things are getting to feel a little bit more realistic, and we're seeing a lot more real-world drivers coming in and putting some practice in the sim rigs before they actually still go out and do it for real on the tracks.
Absolutely, and I'll just push the broadcasting services of Simply Race as well, who are obviously broadcasting this race, and if anybody's ever wanted to experience a live sim event or racing with your friends in sort of a live sim environment, then that's a great place to have a Google of, I'm sure. Just having a look as well, Steve, at the timing order at the moment in qualifying. I've been waiting for the timings to sort of get a little bit closer, and between everybody from 2nd to 16th, it looks very close. But Marshall, I don't know if he's been using that push-to-pass system or something, but he seems to be 1.6 seconds ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, well, he did inform me earlier on today when I had a chat with him that the push-to-pass wasn't working in qualifying, but I'm just wondering if he's forgotten to deactivate it on his, because like you say, he's pretty damn quick today, 1.6 seconds faster than anybody else. I mean, that's not supposed to happen. It
isn't at all. And just his last lap that he just put in, well, not this last lap that he's on now, but was a 2 minute 0.5.6. So even though that's probably more realistic of a lap time that Marshall might put in compared to the rest of them, because they were separated by about a tenth or half a tenth throughout practice, the likelihood of sort of Edmondson, Neuler, Brennan, Butler, McIntyre, I mean, they're all just ridiculously close, aren't they? Separated by 0.2 of a second all the way down from 2nd to 7th place. It's going to line up for some thrilling action.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that's going to be important to point out is that because the cars are on fixed setup, that includes the fuel load. So these guys have started this session with 30 litres of fuel on board, and that is exactly the same amount of fuel they will be starting the race with. So clear track, these are the times we would expect them to do during the race, but I think it will be a different story once they all start battling.
Going to say the most unlikely thing that will have happen in the Nurburgring today will be the fact that we'll have clean air and clean laps, because I'm hoping, and everybody else is probably at home, and indeed the drivers, apart from maybe the one in first place, that we get full-on action and sort of fighting left, right and centre and no clear laps, because if you get a clear lap, that quite means it might be a bit of a procession, but that is one thing we probably won't see today. So with Marshall, we're setting at 2 minutes 4.2. We don't want to say that he has used the push to pass or it's illegal or anything like that, but it's very, very quick. We may see Edmondson on pole position as the checkered flag has just dropped.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think he will have done. I think it's maybe just put an astounding lap in. I mean, the big thing with these TTs is to be absolutely clean with your lines. Keep it sweet, keep it smooth, and during the race, the trick will be using the push to pass at the right time. It's all right having that extra 50 bhp, but if you use it mid-turn, you might find yourself with a handful of understeer.
You may well do, and we were speaking to Dave before the stream went live, weren't we? And he said going up the hill especially, it can be an absolute godsend, can the push-to-pass system. So expect to see a lot of people hitting the button as they're coming back up the hill. But as qualifying drops, we've seen a few more drivers come across the line. McIntyre has actually put in a very respectable time. He's ahead of Edmondson actually now, so he's got himself into 2nd place. Knowles in 4th, Brennan in 5th. They've crossed the line as well, so Butler might be able to put in another fast time, but he's currently in 6th position. And Fairclough in 8th. We saw him higher up the order in practice as well. He's currently out there. Butler hasn't managed to improve. So Fairclough might be the one to upset the order here, but he is 2.3 seconds off at the moment, and that's about half a second off the Smith in front of him.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see that I think there's about 6 of the drivers on that last lap have actually, that's when they've put the best times in. So they're really built up towards the end of the session there to get the times in and do their best on the last lap, ready for the race. So all should be warmed up and ready to go now.
Warmed up and ready to go is just how we like them, and hopefully we'll be able to get potentially some interviews in before race 1, I believe. So we're just having a look down the order and see if we can get maybe the pole sitter, Dave Marshall, if we can get him into the chat. Indeed, I think he's just brought himself in. And Dave, that was an absolutely storming lap time by you. Can you give us a little bit of a story behind that?
I wish I could, but I honestly think that was just a god lap, I think. When everything just hooks up together in a lap, and I think I beat my personal best by about 0.6, so I can't even explain that lap. I'm going to have to watch the replay button myself and understand how I did that. Don't expect to see that in the race.
Yeah, absolutely storming lap that, Dave. Well done, mate. I mean, I was talking to you earlier, and you did tell me that push to pass was disabled, but myself and Jack were really questioning the fact that we thought you'd done a push to pass lap.
No, I can promise you, push to pass wasn't on. But I tell you what, it's I can't understand that myself. I feel a bit bad for posting that lap time, if I'm honest, because I just can't explain that myself. It was just one of them where every corner was about perfect. I don't know whether it was with it being so close to the start of the session or what, but
well done, mate. Absolutely awesome lap, and I'm sure if we get to watch the replay, but I think you need to get back in the hot seat and get ready for the green light to go. So good luck, buddy, for the race, and maybe speak to you later.
Cheers, Steve.
So that was Dave Marshall. Steve, apologies about leaving you with that one. I mistook that one and had a bit of a technical issue, but I think we're about to go racing, and in fact, we are going racing as they get a plummet into the first corner. We see Marshall still in the race lead, McIntyre still in second place as they go down. Doesn't seem to be too many movements in the top 2 or 3, but we are seeing Edmondson and Nolla going side by side. Brennan's moved up a place as well into 5th position. And as they plummet down to the second corner, in fact, Marshall's under a little bit of pressure by McIntyre, Steve. The yellow TT is getting a bit feisty as we see a bit more side-by-side action in the background.
Yeah, it's certainly nose to tail now, and this is where it counts. And as you say, the push to pass is active now, and you can see the cars line astern. Marshall will be trying to get away, but McIntyre, Edmondson, they'll all have something to say about that, and they'll all be nose to tail for a good majority of this race, I think. As we just, they're going to have to gauge when to use that push to pass, and as we say, coming out the corners is the ideal time. And once they get around the hairpin at the bottom of the track and going up the hill towards the centre S's, that's when they'll be looking to get the real acceleration away from the guy behind.
Absolutely, as Edmondson goes just a touch wide, and by the looks of it, he's a touch closer to Nolla actually than he is to McIntyre, so he might actually be under attack from the car behind, but we're on board with him now, and to get a good perspective of how to drive the Nurburgring quickly in an Audi TT, we're on board with Edmondson, and he is obviously following the 2 drivers ahead. Marshall, I'll tell you what, Edmondson was getting very close to the backside of McIntyre there, who seems to favour the curbs a little bit more. Marshall has pulled just a tiny gap, about 0.3 of a second, enough to make sure that he's not going to be lunged by any of the TTs behind him. But not enough to maybe think that he's away and safe with this.
Yeah, and what struck me then when Edmondson was right up behind McIntyre, didn't it? It looked very sort of loose and twitchy on the back end under braking there, did the TT. It looked a bit of a handful.
Well, whatever he's doing, it's working well because McIntyre has actually got through, so ignore everything I was saying about him not being able to perform an attack on the race leader. He's only gone and taken the race lead, and that's the push to pass, I think, taking advantage of that position as McIntyre now is the race leader, and he's under attack now by Marshall as well. Here comes Nolla up the inside of Edmondson as we're looking further back at Brennan now, but here is Nolla up the inside into third place he goes, I got a bit confused. I'm looking at the timing tower there, but the leaders are side by side as well. McIntyre's still ahead. Marshall's got his nose, but McIntyre's on the inside of the second corner. We've seen so often at the Nurburgring how easy it is to defend around the outside of the first corner because you just have the inside for the next two. And I tell you what, Marshall's actually under attack by Nola, who's got a really good run on him now and makes his way, he gets his nose into second place.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see which ones of these guys are actually using the push to pass, because let's not forget they are limited to 15 activations per race, and each activation lasts for 8 seconds. So it may be that we see some of the drivers storming the way to the front, but if they run out of push to pass before the end of the race, they may come back under attack.
Yeah, it did definitely look like Marshall maybe saw McIntyre had used the push to pass and sort of almost let him in before they got to the slow chicane towards the end of the circuit. On board on the bottom right of your screen now as well, with Brennan and I think versus Hayden. As I go side by side, there's big contact actually between Brennan and Hayden, and Hayden's actually gone stage exit left, and he's tumbling down the order down to 11th place as he struggles to get back onto the circuit. But we're back on board with the race leaders as Nola looks to try and make a move on McIntyre, but McIntyre just enough space between him and the car behind. Now, again, this is where we saw the push to pass being activated. Well, sorry, got my place on the track mixed up, but yeah, it is now. The push to pass being activated as they go up the hill towards the chicane, Steve. Who's going to be pressing it? Will Nolan be going for the attack on the race lead? Who knows? We'll see it on board now for Neil as we go. Yeah, there we go. Nolan up the inside of the race leader, McIntyre, but he goes understeering through. McIntyre trying to get the pace back from him, and indeed he does, as Marshall now tries to go around the outside. And Steve, that's exactly what you were talking about. Nola activating the push to pass, but then getting a big amount of understeer. Yeah,
absolutely, but I would expect Dave Marshall there on the exit of the last turn there to be using the push to pass, as we see him now drawing alongside down the straight. I know when we spoke to Dave earlier, he said if both guys use push to pass, it's a bit of a stalemate, but Dave's definitely got the inside there, and I think he's got that move done.
Yeah, speaking of getting the move done, Edmondson's trying to do some moving and shaking and baking as well, and he's actually got his nose ahead. So we were saying last lap about how it's relatively easy to defend into the first corner through the second and third, but it looks like Edmondson got the move done on him fair and square there, and quite early on in the corner, which is great to have him into the third place yet again. So it's all been sort of a different shake-up in terms of the first couple of laps, and we've got 10 minutes to go now. So we've had 5 minutes already, and we've had about 10 changes to the race lead and the podium positions, haven't we?
Yeah, and we're actually on board with Butler now, who holds the fastest lap of the race, which is a 2:07.186. When you consider they're under the same conditions as qualifying, they're a couple of seconds off the pace, but that just goes to show what happens when you start battling. And as you can see, he's battling very close, and he's very late on the brakes there, almost too late.
Yeah, he is almost too late. Marshall's gotten back into the race lead as well, by the way, and McIntyre's actually fallen down to third place. So Edmondson's got himself back up to second, and this is really the sort of appeal of this championship for not only drivers but spectators as well, because it's like activating DRS, but you can do it basically anywhere on the circuit. So it's just thrilling to see. If you time it just wrong, you end up understeering off, you end up going wide, you end up hitting to the back of someone else. We want to see clean, good racing, obviously, but it does add that little bit of spice as they go towards back up the hill and into the chicane. Yeah, again, this is where we've seen a lot of moves going in, but we may well not see too many right now unless Nola has activated it again. No, a flash of the lights, and everybody stays just a bit calmer than they were last time round. But we were talking to David, as you say, before the stream, Steve, and they can activate the toe. Well, they can activate the boost, but the toe is almost just as effective.
Yeah, the toe's just as effective, but the boost will get you alongside just that little bit faster. But if the guy in front activates the boost and you don't, and you're on his slipstream, you'll just about hang on to him, but you won't get alongside him. So the boost is very powerful, but to be fair, so is the slipstream.
Fastest lap of the race goes to Marshall, the race leader at the moment. He was obviously on pole position at the start of this race. He's now got the fastest lap as it was a 2:07 when we were talking about Butler having it. It's now a 2:05, and I think Edmondson maybe just touching a bit wide, meaning that Marshall can now go a little bit ahead. So Edmondson in the green TT, McIntyre in the yellow, Marshall in the blue, obviously, and now we're back on board with Nola in fourth place. The top five have really driven away with this race so far, haven't they? But the more they fight, the more they hold each other up. We could see Brennan and Smith coming more to the to the battle for this potential podium positions.
Yeah, definitely, and I think we're at the phase of the race now where we've got a couple of laps down. We're virtually halfway through the race. They're going to have to start counting the push to passes. How many have I got left, because they don't want to end up with none left and potentially the guy behind having a couple in the bank, so to speak. So yeah, I think they are all settling down, all thinking a bit more about it, and just going to just let things pan out for another lap, settle down, and then go for it again.
We haven't focused too much on this sort of pack, the mid-pack, you could say, and you can see a little bit of damage on the Audi TTs as they come through the chicane. A little bit of bumps and bruises on each of the left-hand side, right-hand side. That shows how brutal this sort of mid-pack can be. In any sort of grid, it's really difficult to make sure that you're having a clean race, especially if you're starting in the midfield. But by the looks of it, this is almost proper touring car racing with bashes here and there, dents here and there, but at the moment, apart from Hayden, who unfortunately went stage exit left at one point, who's just made his way back up to 12th, it all seems to be calming down a little bit, and we're getting some more measured racing for the last 6 minutes of this race.
Yeah, we've just seen Smith move up into 6. I'm sure that looked like a push-to-pass move. He really overtook Brennan very easily there almost. As we're back on board with Edmondson and Marshall back, he's still in the lead there. And like you say, there's a little bit of a gap between them all. And it definitely looks like they've calmed down a little bit. In fact, the front two look to be, although it's not a lot, they do look to be maybe just dragging a few tenths out of third place.
Yeah, McIntyre, he looked very sharp, very quick at the early stage of the race, but he probably, obviously, we don't get to see who actually, when they press the button for push to pass or anything like that, but I imagine he used 1 or 2 on the opening lap to try and get himself up to the lead of the race. So, as you were saying, Steve, the front two have started to pull away. Marshall is just about sort of out of touching distance of Edmondson for now, but that extra 50 brake horsepower, depending on how much Edmondson and Marshall have banked, how many presses they have banked, this could be how we see the race for the end, obviously, because if Marshall sees Edmondson using it, well, he can just press it as well and try and get that 50 horsepower away, but obviously Edmondson will have the tow.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be watching that clock, and it's at 5 minutes 29 seconds plus 1 lap. So obviously, let's not forget they have to complete another lap once the clock hits 0. So yeah, they'll have counted their push to passes. They'll know what they've got left, and I think the guys are just playing tactics now and trying to hold station, hang on to the guy in front if they can. Although we see Noller putting a bit of pressure on McIntyre, be interesting to see if he's tempted to try and make a move. But yeah, they'll be playing more of a tactical game now. I think the frenetic first few laps has probably expended a few too many push to passes for these guys.
Yeah, just having a look at a bit of the information that we have on these drivers. And in second place, Edmondson. Apparently, he's new to the VRRC Championships, but he's proven that he's actually a pretty good contender for the front of the grid. As we get back to him in a minute, because he's actually, Noller's going through on McIntyre. He's used the push to pass. He's got his nose ahead. He's got his entire car ahead, and he's timed it right so he can get into that chicane without understeering wide. Good move by Noller.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that push to pass helps there, as we see a little bit of damage on Thorne's car there. But if you can get the push to pass done on the back straight there before the chicane, you get your nose in front. It's almost like a block pass, isn't it? Because the chicane's definitely not a place to go too wide.
It isn't indeed, and just having a look at the other drivers as well. Noller now defending from McIntyre, who was trying to go around the outside. Maybe he's going to try and get the cutback, but again, it's really difficult. I'll tell you what, Edmondson is really putting the pressure on Marshall. So we said he was new to the VRRC Championship. Well, he's definitely proving that he's got a potential championship sort of brimming in him. A victory here at the Nurburgring will definitely put him well on his way, but Marshall's going to do everything he can to keep him behind, and that includes obviously using all the cars that'll the advantages he can get with the car as well, maybe changing the brake bias as he drives. He's an extremely experienced driver, is Marshall, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, and you just see McIntyre just putting some pressure on here. I think things are starting to liven up again in this battle, and the front two with Marshall and Edmondson as we just go onto the rear view of Marshall's car, which often gives you some interesting shots into the braking zones as you see the car behind really close up on the brakes. But yeah, I think the race is going to come back to life again in a few minutes, and with only 3 minutes left on the clock, it's going to be the time to make some moves. And let's not forget that after this race, when they go into the next one, the top 12 are reversed on the grid. Yeah,
and they'll have ballast on board as well. So we're on board with McIntyre, and He doesn't actually practice that much, apparently. He's one for pulling an absolute blinder of a lap out of qualifying, but he's not actually a driver who sort of practices that much, but he does have extremely good racecraft, apparently, in a little intel, shall we say. But they do suspect that he'll be a good contender for the championship as well, and he's proving that tonight in the fact that, one, he's obviously stayed on with such fast drivers, and two, he's actually holding his own in the fact that he doesn't practice much. It's very impressive, isn't it? Naturally talented, he must be.
Yeah, it's one of those guys that you know yourself when you're on a server and you're in a community. Every community's got a couple of guys that tend to be able to just turn up, or if you say we're going to race this car, we're going to race that car, and they don't have much practice, they just turn up, race, and do pretty damn well usually. As we see McIntyre going side by side now into down the straight, trying to set a move up for turn 1.
Yeah, Nola just defending that and seeing that off. And actually the race lead battle as well between Edmondson and Marshall was cut off a little short because I think Edmondson maybe understeered off through the final corners. So as Brennan gets overtaken by Stapleford, he's now going to try and get the cut back, the reverse back on him. But it's going to be so difficult. He'll really need to make sure that he's getting on the apexes, making sure he's alongside him now. But it's such a long left-hander now, Steve, that you can't get the car turned in. The driver's on the apex for such a long amount of time. The momentum is really difficult to carry around there.
Yeah, when you're that far out as he was there, it's so difficult, like you say, to get it actually turned into the apex or anywhere near. As we saw him, he was a country mile away from the apex on that occasion. But credit to him, he's battling, he's trying, and he's keeping the pressure on Stapleford in front of him, and that's what it's all about. Because if you're not going to be able to get that pass done under power, you can force a mistake from your opponent.
Yeah, I think Brennan's actually dropped down a couple of places. He was in 6th position fighting with Butler, but now he's down in 8th position fighting with Stapleford. So there may have been a bit of a battle between him and Smith or him and Butler, but now he's obviously down trying to fight back for 7th position as we're back on board with McIntyre, and it's been a good drive for these drivers. But remember, this is the first race of not only the evening but the entire series, isn't it? They'll be measuring themselves out as we see Brennan now trying to throw it yet again round the outside of Stapleford. Stapleford really making sure he's putting his car right in the sort of most difficult positions for Brennan, and that's exactly what he's got to do. He's only got 30 seconds plus a lap to go. So as we see a driver in the background, Fairclough actually, who's one of the drivers we saw very quick in practice but hasn't really been able to convert it to qualifying or race pace. But Stapleford now, all he needs to do is make sure that he gets across the line and then just defends on the last lap, because it's going to be really difficult for Brennan to get round as he dives to the inside now into the first corner. And that was an opportunity for Brennan maybe to get alongside as Stapleford ran a bit wide, but since he clattered the curbs a little bit too much, he didn't get the run. Will he activate the push to pass now? It depends how many he's got left in the bank, but I think McIntyre has activated it, and I think Nola has actually activated to defend on him as well, as we're seeing in the bottom right hand of the screen. Top left is that fight between Brennan and Stapleford, who is now swapping left and right again, and he's gone wide actually, Brennan. So it's all heating up, as you were saying, Steve, in the final couple of minutes, and this is the final lap.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, it's just on our notes with Brennan reference driver notes. It does say that he's one to watch and could fly under the radar, but very capable of challenging for victories. So he's showing that he's very capable of challenging. Doesn't matter where he is on the in the running order, but he's certainly putting pressure on the car in front now, which is Stapleford.
Yeah, he's a previous driver in the Mini E Series, a series obviously run by the VRRC, and a fair few of the drivers that we've got here today are sort of very familiar with that championship, and I think it's the front-wheel drive nature of it, isn't it? If you can drive a front-wheel drive car, there's similar sort of lengths of chassis and everything. You can probably hustle an Audi TT car around here as well. As we're now coming on to the final few corners for the leaders at the moment, it looks like it's going to be a 7 or 8 lap race, with Edmondson's now dropped back 2 seconds to Marshall, so it looks like Marshall's going to have this one in the bag.
Yeah, maybe he just saved a couple more push to passes and he's managed to pull a bit of a lead. But it's worth mentioning 6th place Smith, he's got the current fastest lap with a 2:05.3, so that's an achievement in this race, because we've seen it's been fast, furious and hard paced. Especially
with Marshall trying to build that gap up as well. Smith must have used an awful lot of an awful lot of the track really, and slipstream and tow and boost as well. So really brilliant driving by Smith, and obviously that is an extra point in his way in the championship. It's a point for the fastest lap and a point for qualifying. As they're coming through the chicane now, still focusing on Brennan versus Stapleford. He hasn't been able to make that move stick yet, has he, Brennan? He's still trying his best, but now actually it looks like Stapleford just built a bit of a gap, and now Butler's actually got past on McIntyre. So maybe McIntyre tried the move on Noller. It didn't go quite well. And actually Butler's stormed through the field to try and catch these guys back up. And it looks like he has in 4th place.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. And as you said about the fastest lap, Marshall's taken it back with a 2:05.014. So he's at the moment, he's got that extra point for the fastest lap.
He has indeed, and I got my laps mixed up actually. As McIntyre gets a big hit, Butler gets a big hit on the backside by McIntyre. Luckily, these front-wheel drive cars, you just keep your foot pinned, and the car will eventually turn you in the right direction. But I'm sure he won't appreciate that, as there's more bumping and barging. It looked like there's a little bit of damage, or maybe there's just bumping. I'm not entirely sure, but McIntyre and Butler are getting far too familiar with themselves for their own liking.
Yeah, swapping paint and just putting a few ripples in each other's doors there by the looks of it. But it doesn't look like McIntyre's finished for the day. He's going to have another go by the looks of it.
He is indeed, and at the top right of your screen, we can see that Marshall is now coming across. Well, sorry, not coming across the line. He's about to come up to take the checkered flag line as he's coming through the left-hander. He's got about half the lap to go, so keep an eye on your top right of your screen. But obviously, you want to be watching McIntyre versus Butler because it's served up a tasty treat. And if this is anything, we've got the reverse grid to look forward to as well, as these drivers will be back at each other, going for race lead and race position.
Yeah, we saw McIntyre just nibbling the back of Butler again in the previous corner. So he's certainly, he's getting the overspeed out of the corners compared to Butler, and he just keeps nibbling away at his rear bumper. But all the time, Smith will be the man that was wishing for a couple more laps because he's really closed up on these guys.
Yeah, Butler and Smith, absolutely blistering pace shown by them as we're on board with them. But we are having a look, of course, at Marshall, who's taking the chicane for the final time. But on the outside, tries to go McIntyre deep on the brakes. Goes Butler a little bit too deep, and there's more contact, as luckily Butler gets away with that. Marshall is going to take the race victory for race number 1 here in the TT Cup at the Nurburgring, and a big hit on the backside by McIntyre on Butler again. And you can't take your eyes away from this, Steve. It's absolutely thrilling. Marshall's taken home checkered flag. 2nd place Edmondson, Noller in 3rd, but wow, oh wow, McIntyre and Butler, you're going to have to shake hands and apologise. That was tough, Steve.
Yeah, there needs to be a virtual handshake at the end of that one, I think, because you mentioned touring cars earlier. That was touring car-esque. That was definitely a bit of rubbing. Yeah. As we seen Thorne with a bit of damage on the front end there, and coming around to complete the race.
Some will claim that rubbing is racing, but some might claim that it could be a bit fair, as looks like Richard's going a little bit wide through the final corner, and as they cross the line, he'll end up in 15th with Laramie in 14th, and that is our full grid, I believe. So we'll be able to bring you the full rundown of the finishing order. But obviously, we've got some interviews to do as well, Steve, and I think, well, we've already had a chat with Marshall, so we might end up getting a bit of a chat with Edmondson or Noller. I'll let you decide.
Yeah, let's see if we can get Edmondson in if we can.
And hopefully my interviewing skills will actually work. Max, congratulations on 2nd place. That was a very tough race, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just slowly losing off Dave, but fortunately I could bring it home in 2nd, so happy with that.
The early stages of the race, you saw a lot of sort of mixing, battling, changes for almost the entirety of the top 5, wasn't there? Was there a sort of a point in there where you thought maybe you could get into the race lead and maybe use a few of the boost passes to maybe just get away and get a bit of a gap and let them fight?
I mean, at the start it was really close. I was trying to get first and then obviously slowly gap, but obviously I dropped off from Dave, so I don't think that was possible at the end of the race.
Yeah, well, we saw you very close with Dave. It was almost looking like towards the sort of 6-minute mark that it was going to be between you and Marshall, and then sort of the rest of the field were going to have their own little fight. But I think you just went a touch wide on coming out of the chicane. Was that due to the boost, or was that anything to do with just maybe getting a bit keen on the power?
I boosted, I think, on that straight, and then I ran a tiny bit wide. Broke a bit late because obviously it's a bit fast.
It is indeed, yeah. So you'll have a bit of ballast on into the 2nd race. I believe it's 27 kilograms. Have you ran the car with any kind of ballast on it in practice? Is it a very different machine, or is it sort of very similar, or have you not had that practice yet?
I haven't had that much practice, but I don't think it should be that much different.
Well, in that case, then, will we expect to see you running up the race order through the... obviously, it's a top 12 reverse grid, so you'll be starting in 11th place. Do you think you can manage to get towards the podium yet again?
Try my best.
Brilliant news. Well, is there anybody you'd like to give a quick shout out to, Max, before we let you get back and warm up for the next race?
Bud Cole, John Park, and NGK Spark Plugs.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Max, and we will see you in the next race. Good luck.
Thank you.
That was Max Edmondson, Steve. He seemed pretty happy with second place. It'll be tough for him to fight through the order, won't it, and to get up back maybe into that position. But he's going to give it a good go by the looks of it.
He is, but I mean, obviously, this is the first race these guys have had, in anger, as it were. So he'll really know what it's like battling up at the front. He'll know how many of those push to passes he sort of used roughly, in the first half of the race. He'll know if he's got a few more in the bank to use to try and get through the field from 11th place. But as we saw there, I don't think it's going to be easy, mate.
It's not indeed, and actually I would love to have a chat very quickly if we can. I think we've got time for a chat with McIntyre, because obviously he was right in the thick of the action towards the end there, especially in his battle with Butler seemed to be really almost boiling over. It was probably quite lucky that neither of them did have another lap, because it may well have ended in tears.
Yeah, they were certainly taking sort of chunks out of each other, and like I say, through the corners, I don't know how that rear bumper managed to stay on the car, because it was certainly well chewed, shall we say.
It was indeed, and we'll see if we can get have a chat with McIntyre at some point. But obviously, we've got a second race to think about now, and well, what do you expect from the likes of Marshall and Edmondson and McIntyre and everything? McIntyre's obviously starting a bit further ahead of all of them. Do you expect them to come through rather cleanly? Will it be early in the race, or will they try and save up maybe that boost to maybe try and put a move on as soon as everything calms down a bit?
Oh, mate, I need danger money working with you. You're putting me on the spot again, aren't you? But no, I mean, to be fair, we were looking at the times of the guys in that last race, and when they were all battling together, the whole grid were very, very close on times. It was only Dave Marshall at the end of the race, once he did get that clean air, managed to, he set the fastest lap, as we're now got red lights, so we're ready for race 2.
We are indeed ready for race 2. We've got the lights, we'll have engine noise, and we are away. And it's O'Farrell who's on pole position. Actually, Yao's got... it's O'Farrell on pole position. He's got a good run away, as well as Thorne's actually made his way to second place. And tell you what, these two drivers ahead have got an absolutely storming start. Fairclough in third place. He showed good pace in practice. He didn't manage to do it in the race, but he may have a second chance now. Side by side go the two leaders. O'Farrell still has it by quite a stretch. And actually, Thorne and Fairclough are now going side by side. O'Farrell, what a start, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. These cars aren't the easiest to get off the line, because they have the DSG gearbox, which means there's no clutch. So it's like hold the revs where you want them. As we see a bit of contact there, hold the revs where you want them, and then as soon as the lights go green, you sort of literally bang it into gear launch control, as it were. And it's easy to bog down or wheel spin one or the other.
It certainly is, and it's big stage exit left moment for one of the drivers, and that is Edmondson. So after we just had a good chat with that Edmondson, he's ended up he's all the way down in 16th place, and I probably have a written off car. There's more contact as well between Stapleford and Thorne, and actually Thorne's gone off on the left-hand side as well into the kitty litter. He's rejoined now, but a bit of drama on the first lap here in the race number 2. This is what happens with reverse grid. Late lunge, and into the kitty litter goes Thorne as well. I think that was Thorne again. And no, it was Press actually onto the kitty litter that time. So, wow, it's all happening so fast, Steve, and it's hard to know where to look.
Yeah, calm down, boys. 13.5 minutes to go. You need to finish the race. But yeah, definitely nose to tail. And really, the reverse grid is just showing the faster boys wanting to come through. And I say faster boys, I say that respectfully, because the times are very close. We just see another car running wide there. But, the times are close. But, a few tenths here, a few tenths there, as we say, it all adds up to a little bit of contact in the corners.
It can make an absolute massive difference. It's made a big difference for Brennan, who, although he ran wide, he actually overtook Fairclough and got the race lead. And Fairclough's actually dropped down a little bit, I think, now. So Brennan in the race lead, and O'Farrell now. O'Farrell's dropped down now. Sorry, it wasn't Fairclough, it was O'Farrell in the green car. And there's more contact as off goes stage exit left of a few other drivers. I think one of them was Butler, one of them was McIntyre. Big hit on the backside for O'Farrell for Nola by O'Farrell. It's hard to keep track of all this, Steve, as half of them look the same.
Yeah, well, Farrell there really compromised himself down the straight there as well, because obviously he hit the back and he had to lift off, and he's just, where he should have been flat out on the power. But we see Smith there trying to go down the inside, and I think he's going to get that move done. He's up into 5th place now, O'Farrell down to 6th.
Yeah, and Marshall just slowly and surely making his way through the order. He is now in 7th place. Obviously, he'll have 30 kilograms of ballast on board, and he's just probably thinking, if everyone's going to take each other off, I'll just sit here and slowly make these moves, use the push to pass when I need to, and just take advantage of other people's misdoings, because there is some more of it between McIntyre and Butler. So this race is restarted what race 1 finished as.
I would say it's come alive, but I don't think it was ever in any other state, to be honest. I mean, they're just really hammering it round to these boys. And as you say, it's a little bit unfortunate that a few of them decided to take each other out, or they've run a little bit wide, whatever. Battling really hard, because it does play into the hands of Marshall and the likes, because it makes it that little bit easier for them to get up to the front. And if they're getting up to the front using less of their push to passes, it means they're going to have them in the bank when they need them.
It's smart driving by Marshall and the other drivers as well, that's for sure. And hopefully everybody else sort of calms down a little bit, because actually Marshall's really the only big gain there. He's already made his way up 6 positions into 6th. So if this trend is anything to go by, well, by the end of the next 2 laps, he'll be in the race lead.
Yeah, he's pushing, like you say, really smart driving, really clean, really smooth, just watching the drivers around him. Great racecraft, let them make the mistakes, let them leave the doors open, and he's working his way up 6th place. He's got Smith in front of him in 5th. I don't think, from what we saw in the first race, I don't think Smith will be an easy pass by any means. And then obviously we've got Brennan and Fairclough going hammer and tong up in 1st and 2nd.
Well, it's not just Brennan and Fairclough, because Stapleford was trying to make it 3 wide, and they're wide. There goes one of the drivers who were in the race lead. In fact, no, that was yes, I think that was Fairclough. So Fairclough, he was going almost two abreast into the chicane, something you don't really advise to do. But he's obviously now come off worse as Brennan and Stapleford have the race lead. Noller is in 3rd place. Fairclough and Smith going side by side as well. Fairclough's got his nose ahead, but it's a big late break on well, that was Smith. I thought he was going to go for the overtake on Smith, but no, there's been more contact as they go 3 wide into the 2nd corner. It's never going to go well, Steve, and it hasn't, as Fairclough has come on, whereas Smith has gone wide. Marshall's gone through everyone, and we were saying he was smart before. Well, he's just taken advantage of an absolutely massive mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. He's whipped straight up into 4th, as we're seeing the guys there trying to recover. That's Fairclough. He's lost so many positions there now. That's with such short races like this, that's his race pretty much done now. Racing for pride, I'm afraid. But yeah, Marshall up into 4th place, and Marshall with the current fastest lap of a 2:06.7. So in traffic, he's still the fastest man on track.
Well, he got maximum amount of points in the last race, and the TT of Hayden actually getting a little bit of the back end loose. I'm not sure if there was any kind of contact, or whether that was just the fact that he maybe just got the back end loose a little bit. But Thorne and Edmondson now. Edmondson's a little off earlier, doesn't seem quite as bad as we see. That is O'Farrell, just keeps falling down the order. And Butler as well going side by side. He just seems to attract danger, doesn't he, at the moment? Butler is getting hit left, right, and centre.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's are you attracting it, or are you maybe just trying too hard and just putting yourself in the wrong place on the track? But yeah, seeing a bit of contact there. But the beauty of these front-wheel drive cars is they can take a little bit of a tap like that, and like you said earlier, keep your foot in, and hopefully it'll just pull you through the corner.
Well, we've seen a lot of misdoings and bad driving, but that right there was great sportsmanship, as Stapleford ended up hitting Brennan, forcing him off the circuit, and then as Brennan rejoined, Stapleford came off the throttle and let him back through to take the race lead to restart this fight. That's really what you want to see, Steve, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we're racing, but it's all about camaraderie and sort of racing with your mates, trying for the championship, but making sure you have some good stories to tell and good battling out on circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got to be praised and encouraged, definitely, if you get an unfair advantage like that. And, kudos to him for giving that position back. And let's face it, when the boot's on the other foot, you'd like to think it would happen, did do the same thing.
Yeah, karma does seem to be a big thing in motorsport, in any level, in any situation, whether it's on the computer or real life or on a bike or anything like that. So hopefully he does get it come back his way at some point, Stapleford. We're on board with Thorne now, and as I said before, Edmondson, he went off at the beginning of the race, whether it was for contact or whether it was a mistake, I can't quite remember. I think it was contact. He went right down to last position. He's already back up to 8th place. That's how much carnage has been going on. So his off before doesn't now seem as bad, although his bonnet is flapping a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I say, the drivers that have run off the track or they've had collisions and stuff certainly haven't done themselves any favours. And we're seeing quite a few cars more in this race than the previous race running around with damage now. So obviously that's going to affect the lap times.
I think I just saw a car in the air. I'm not sure if my stream glitched. Apologies for cutting across you there, Steve. When you see a car flying around the Nurburgring, you often have to wonder why. I'm not too sure. I think it's Butler, actually. He's now DNF'd, so I think his car's been written off, and that's not surprising if we see him 10 feet in the air.
I think that's called exceeding track limits, mate. I think he was definitely track cut.
Yeah, no, that's low-flying aircraft. Beware, I think, there for Butler. But obviously, we were saying he was attracting danger before, he certainly was doing that there. Or maybe he was just trying really hard to get out of the way of everybody else. We don't know yet, but Stapleford still in second place. Brennan doing a good job of leading this race so far, but he's just gone straight off. Curse of the commentator. He's gone straight off, and Stapleford will be thinking, flashing the light, boost is on. Here's my opportunity to try and get him up the inside. He's going to be on the outside. I tell you what, they may well go 3 abreast yet again. And we saw this happen in the second corner with a few other drivers. We don't want to see it go the same way here because it's a great battle for the race lead and we want to see it through to the end. Nola doesn't make it 3 wide, but he is going to make it up the inside here and into second place.
Yeah, and just look who's closing behind them. Marshall creeping up there. He's a sort of he's 8/10 off third place now, so he's really creeping in, which is he's about a second and a half off the lead. He's really closing in. I know he's got Smith in close attention, but those two are definitely going to make this a 5-way battle within the next sort of couple of laps, I would say.
Well, the biggest worry for these 3 drivers as well is the fact that Marshall hasn't really needed to do anything in terms of push to pass because he's just been taking advantage of everybody else's mistakes. And as these drivers hold themselves up, he's just been watching this thinking, all right, well, there's about 6 minutes left of the race. I'll just drive up to the back of you, have a bit of a fight with Smith, and then use 15 push-to-passes in the last 3 or 4 laps. I mean, it could be worse for Marshall in this situation.
You could be right, and it's just it's a shame that we can't tell how many push-to-passes the drivers have got left, or when they're actually activating them. That would be a great addition. But yeah, you would have to say he possibly has got a few in the bank because he won't have been using them when he's been in really heavy traffic because obviously there'd be nothing to gain unless he had a clear passing opportunity.
Now, he may have to be using 1 or 2 of them to try and hold off the attack of Smith, but I'm sure if Smith was sort of probably smart about this, he looks like he just wants the position for himself, but he'd be seeing the fact that he's behind Marshall, winner of race 1, pole position sitter. He's actually not just behind him, he's alongside him now, and be thinking, you know what, he's made his way all the way through, he's quick enough to catch the 3 in front of us. Let's work together, get up to that, make it a 5-way battle for the race. With 5 minutes left, there's every opportunity that Smith could come away with the race win here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sensible side of you would, that would be a plan. But you've been in the situation, I'm sure, in the real world where, that would have been the sensible thing. But do you always do it?
Absolutely not. No, you want track position, and it's just about pride in a lot of ways. You see your championship leader, who he is currently, Marshall, race 1 winner. You just think, I want to prove myself. I want to beat you. But they're going 2 by 2 by the looks of it. 2 by 2, hurrah, into the chicane. Stapleford keeps his position off Nola for now, but here goes Brennan, here goes Marshall on the inside, and he's already pretty much got himself up to 3rd place around the final corner. Marshall's on the charge.
He's indeed. Now I'm thinking now he's going to be on that push to pass and he's going to be challenging for another place as we see them side by side down the straight. Absolutely awesome racing this.
Yeah, it's cracking. This is what we love to see in a single make series, in a reverse grid, ballast on board, 5 drivers all going for the race lead, just like we saw it in race 1, but obviously 5 different drivers now, which is what brings the reverse grid to life, really. But Stapleford and Marshall, and that's actually Brennan and Marshall by the looks of it, going side by side. Brennan will have the inside, and I thought Smith was going to go up the inside there, Steve. I almost had my heart in my mouth, but by the looks of it, they're just biding their time for now, and Brennan makes his way back through.
That's absolutely cracking driving from Brennan, because I thought Marshall was going to end that move as they came out of the Mercedes arena on the inside and get the job done, but Brennan managed to just keep his nose in front and defend the position. Absolutely fantastic.
He has indeed, but late on the brakes goes Marshall, and that was a really aggressive sort of look up the inside, filling the mirrors of Brennan, making sure that he knows he's in for a race now, because as we're getting towards the last 3 minutes of the race, obviously there will be 1 extra lap added on as well. It's actually McIntyre who holds the fastest lap, and if Marshall can't get through, he won't be able to secure a clean air to go and get that fastest lap back off him at the moment either. So McIntyre currently holding the fastest lap point and taking that away from a few of the others.
Yeah, definitely, and it's in championships like this where the reverse grid for the second race, every single point is going to count for these guys, and they're all going to be desperate to score them all.
He will indeed. I'm just having a look at Nola, who's currently in the race lead, and one of our driver notes. He's new to the VRRC, so he hasn't driven with these drivers an awful lot, but he has got plenty of experience on the sim. He's actually a RPM esports driver, but he hasn't done many laps of practice, which is maybe why he was a bit further sort of down around about the top 5 in the first race. But now he's really showing his racecraft against really some of the fastest around as well. It's he's pulled away really almost a second gap between first and second place now.
Yeah, and we see Marshall losing another place there to Smith. He managed to get the inside line on him going into the last corner and take that position away. So let's see what Smith can do now, as he's jinking left and right, and he's just trying to get the inside line for T1, and he looks like he's got that. Let's just need to get the job finished.
It's been certainly entertaining. It's been fascinating to watch as well, because every time they come up to, I don't know if it's just the grill or the attitude of the car, but every time they come up to each other, it's really aggressive driving as well, isn't it, in the TTs? I think you have to really put your car in the right position. Obviously, track position is key in any motorsport, but especially around the Nurburgring, it's all about how aggressive you can be, get the car up the inside, making sure you're making the driver go off the racing line, because if you're off the racing line, it's really hard to carry any kind of momentum around the Nurburgring, just for the fact that it's quite a long apexes, there's sweeping corners, isn't it? It's really difficult to sort of like carry any momentum around the outside.
Yeah, and I know, again, speaking to Dave earlier on today, he said to me, you've got to really push the front end on these cars. You've got to get it to dig in. If you're too gentle with it, then it makes it worse, and you do suffer with more understeer. And we can see that in some of the corners, he's trail braking, which means he's carrying that brake until the apex of the corner, and he's really throwing the front end in and making it dig in and turning the Audi. And I think, that's where he's getting a lot of his speed from, because that's the beauty of the one-make series. No one's got an advantage with the car. It's down to driver ability, and pace.
Yeah, it's also on the grass now, as he was trying to find a little bit of space to get past the driver in front of Brennan. He's actually now having to defend from Smith, as we now focus on Smith. Brennan goes wide. Marshall's going to be on the outside. Smith slots his way straight at the inside. Marshall is not having it his own way, but here we go. Brennan goes wide yet again. Push to pass is going to be activated. It must be by Smith and Marshall to try and get up to the backside of a poor exit from Brennan. Into the chicane we go. Nolla is by far and away the race leader by 2 seconds now, as Stapleford and Brennan were fighting with each other earlier, and actually looks like they've gone slightly wide on each other. And there we go, Stapleford's gone on the inside, on the outside. Brennan trying to make the move. Marshall flying around the outside. He hasn't found it easy, but this might be an opportunity to get himself back in the mix and try and get a couple of drivers into the first corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, someone should tell these guys they're not the four-wheel drive TTs. Keep them off the grass, boys. They're going to go faster on the tarmac. And Marshall doing a great job of fighting back, and he's in fourth place, and it's looking like that's where he's going to stay at the moment. He's got that position back, and he's on the outside of Brennan by the looks of it. So that's not going to work.
He seems to have been stuck behind these drives. Big shunt up the backside, though, by Smith to Marshall, and that actually hurt Brennan the most. But Smith has probably been sat behind him thinking, well, come on, if you're going to make the move, make it. And he ended up, there's a big hit there between Brennan and Smith, and maybe they knew what was happening between them there, because there's even more off and into the tyre wall. And we don't like to claim there was any menace there, but it looked like something was brewing between the two of them.
Yeah, a little bit of door rubbing side by side as they went through the Mercedes arena, but which that allowed Marshall to get the job done, and he's now firmly got his foot on that third step of the podium. Be interesting to see if he can do anything now, as I think we're on the last lap now.
Yeah, I haven't actually been keeping an eye on whether this is the +1 lap or whether we cross the line, but I think this is the +1 lap. So Stapleford will now be looking in his rearview mirrors, and he'll know exactly the car he's got behind him. He'll know that Smith is behind him as well. It'll be really interesting to see how tactics play into play here, and how confident Stapleford is, as Nolla is obviously in the top right-hand side of your screen. That probably means that we are on the final lap of the race. Keep an eye on him as he comes across the line. But Stapleford now, if he just keeps his car in the right positions, he could actually bring Smith back to attack Marshall and then just take second place without too much fuss. But if you start doing those kind of tactics, well, you have to worry about whether you're going to do it correctly. If you're slowing up the driver behind you, that means you're slowing yourself up as well. And if you do it wrong, Marshall will just drive past.
None of these guys are going to slow up, Jack. They're just hell for leather going for that checkered flag. But it just goes to show what the battling did, because those guys were all together, but Nolla has now pulled 2.5 second gap, to claim this race victory as he turns the final corner now onto the start-finish straight to claim that victory. Fantastic drive and fastest lap as well.
Yeah, he's absolutely stormed the final sections of this race, and he's come across the line to take race victory in race number 2 here in the VRRC TT Cup. And he'll be very pleased about it as well. In fact, no, I think we're on to the final lap, so that wasn't That wasn't the checkered flag. I got mixed up with the cameras. Apologies about that. Nola is still in the race lead. Stapleford's going to have to defend for one more lap. There's a tap between him and Marshall on the inside into turn 2 here. Marshall's trying everything he can to get past, as Stapleford really needs to just think about track position and bringing Smith back into it now, because he purely doesn't have the race pace against Marshall now.
Yeah, Marshall had to dip on the brakes there because Stapleford just looked like he was almost turning into him a little bit, and that cost Marshall a bit of time and dropped him back off that podium. So yeah, unlucky for Marshall there, but good close racing.
Absolutely, and thank you everybody who's been watching for tonight as well, giving the comments on the stream. It's brilliant to have you along. I hope you guys have enjoyed the TT Cup, and I hope you'll be back for the next couple of weeks as well. 4-round championship, going to some brilliant tracks: Imola, Brands GP, obviously the Nurburgring and Catalonia. So expect to see some brilliant racing carry on through the entirety of the 4 races. But Smith has got himself ahead of Marshall, and what can Marshall do as they're coming up to the latter part of this lap now? It's really difficult. Not many overtaking opportunities, but there is a big one into the chicane and the last corner. Will we see a flying inside move maybe? It's hard to say. It depends how many times they got the boost left.
The trouble is for Marshall, he's got 2 cars to pass that are battling him, and the tracks are not really wide enough for 2 cars, let alone 3. So he's going to have to be really canny about how he tries to make that move, if he does. And he's like I say, he's really on the back of Smith now. Literally, Smith, the contact. Smith's off.
Yeah, he was you were right, he was on the back of him. He was into the back of him, unfortunately. And actually, it looks like Hayden might actually inherit a couple of places here as he makes the move on the 2 of them. And actually, I think Marshall might be waiting for them to drive past, but he doesn't make it now. And actually, he's been joined by Edmondson and McIntyre. Edmondson's gone through on Smith. A big lunge by Edmondson, and actually it's taken him, McIntyre, back out. So McIntyre and Edmondson going backwards. The race win has been taken by Nola for race number 2. I'm sorry that we didn't shout you out, Nola, earlier, but to be honest, you can understand why if you watch the stream back, because it's been absolutely thrilling racing. Nola takes the race victory for race number 2 here, the TT Cup. Second time of asking that we shouted that out, but Stapleford did end up with 2nd place. Hayden on the podium. Out of nowhere, Marshall ended up in 4th.
Yeah, Edmondson's car looked about ready for the scrapyard there when he came down the start finish. It looked well beaten. Obviously been racing very hard. But yeah, Rich Hayden, who I said should have been in the top 6 in the first race and wasn't, has done us proud this time, and he's in 3rd place for us. Well done, Rich.
Yeah, we'll have a couple of interviews coming up, but it'd be great to have a chat with Rich Hayden, obviously the owner of VRRC as well. So it'll be great to have a chat with him up, and yeah, we'll have a couple of interviews coming your way. But Steve, if that's what we've got to look forward to, then it's just going to be thrilling 4 weeks of action, isn't it? 3 weeks left. I'm already a bit sad that we've only got 3 weeks left.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant racing. To be honest, some of those moves, I bet the guys are glad they're not in the same room as each other, because I'm not sure it'd finish on the sim rig. But yeah, it was interesting, very close, some very good racing, and really excited to see what comes from the following 3 rounds, as it were.
Yeah, and I think although he ended up in 4th place, we'll probably, I mean, if my maths are correct anyway, I think Marshall is the championship leader, but I think we've potentially got a couple of drivers coming into the interview room. So it'd be great to have a chat with our winner as well, of Jack Noller. He drove away at the end, really, didn't he? And in fact, he's been brought into the interview room. Jack Noller, congratulations on the win. That was pretty hard fought, but in the end, a pretty big gap for you.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy race starting in the middle of the pack there. It's just about picking your moments as the chaos was around. I had a bit of a few moments, but made the pass stick for the lead where I needed to, just as Dave was catching up, and managed to pull the gap and get fastest lap as well. So, with you. Mega.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic to watch, obviously. And as you said, you ended up getting fastest lap. You ended up with the race win. So it was pretty much an all-round perfect race for you, obviously. But it was also looked like a very enjoyable race at the front end there, especially in the earlier parts. You were probably quite glad to see them all fighting and you just have clear air. But it must have been enjoyable for you, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And got to say thanks to Dave for inviting me here, and my team at RPM and to all the guys there for getting me in the position that I'm able to race at this quality, because this field is really, really high quality. So yeah, the race has been really enjoyable today. I'm looking forward to the next one.
It is indeed, and obviously you're new to the sort of VRRC world, you could say, and you're obviously straight up there at the front end. Have you got any other sort of plans of what championships you're taking involved in at the moment?
As you say, I'm very new. I only knew this world existed 2 days ago, so
Wow, that is new.
So I'm gonna be having a look around, speaking to some of the guys. They recommended a few championships to have a look at, so I'll be definitely having a look around and seeing what else is there as well.
Well, brilliant. And just before we let you go, Jack, to enjoy your champagne that you may well be having at home, is there anybody you'd like to give a quick shout out to before we go?
Obviously, shout out to the guys on my team, Justin and GT Omega and HyperX, and the list goes on with Student Motorsports and World Pro Racing and Gaming Malta. So that's everyone back at base who allow me to be at this level and race here. And obviously the shout out to mum and dad back at home for watching along.
Oh, well, it's nice to have mum and dad tuning in as well. Hello to everyone from us as well. Jack, congratulations on race 2. We'll see you next week, obviously. Probably back fighting for podium positions.
Very much. See you next week.
So that was Jack Noller, everyone. And I think I'm going to be slightly cheeky here. Maybe rush 1 or 2 interviews and bring in Robbie Stapleford. Robbie, if you're there, second place was hard fought in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, hard race. Just had to keep on defending and yeah. Just.
How was it when you saw Dave Marshall come up to the backside of you as well? Because obviously you were really sort of fighting hard to defend, but when you see someone of his speed come up to the back of you, it's a bit of a different mindset, isn't it? It looked like you were defending very hard.
Yeah, defending very hard to keep him behind. It was quick, so.
Yeah, no, well, just like Jack was saying as well, it must have been very exciting towards the beginning of the race and obviously at the end of the race as well. It was, unlike Jack, it was pretty just non-stop for you, wasn't it? I'm guessing you're a little bit tired after that one. Hey, you there, Robbie?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, non-stop. Just had to keep on going and don't give up.
Absolutely, don't give up. A good motto. And as I said, I do have a couple of interviews to do, so I will just quickly wrap up. But is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to?
Mum and dad and all my family who's watching.
Brilliant. So we'll say hello to the family from us as well, Robbie. And good luck for next week. I'm sure we'll be seeing you up the top order again.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you. See ya.
And last but not least, Dave Marshall. We're going to bring you back into the comms box just for a signing off. That was a difficult race for you. It looked like the first half, the first sort of 10 minutes was pretty standard, just taking advantage of other people's misfortunes, you could say. But then it was harder than you may have thought to get past that top 5.
Yeah, I mean, after quali, you probably looked at it and thought, well, you know, Dave's got the pace to just sort of walk away with this round, but it really just shows the strategy and order you need to use with boost to pass or push to pass. Sorry. Yeah, you know, I got through the field reasonably well in race 2. There was quite a lot of carnage, so we're going to have a look at driving standards there, just try and improve things there. But other than that, yeah, got through at the front. I think I probably had 6 push to passes left, and just struggled to make any progress from there. Really, got up behind Robbie, and Robbie clearly knows how to defend very well, and I had Isaac behind us who was trying to jump in any gap possible, and yeah, any move that I tried to make on Robbie, Isaac was then trying to undercut me. So it was a very difficult race to try and progress once I got to sort of the top 5, if you like. So yeah, I mean, it's a real eye-opener. There's some really, really good drivers in this championship, a lot of new guys, and I'm really impressed with how quickly they've jumped into the car, and a lot of them haven't really done that much practice, and they're still running at front pace. So who knows what they can do when they put 60 to 100 laps in practice. So interesting to see next week.
Yeah, well, obviously you've got a whole host of tracks lined up for the next 3 weeks. Brands Hatch, Imola and Catalunya. What are the sort of favourite ones for you there? Brands Hatch is always a bit of a driver's favourite, and that's the next one. Yeah,
but Brands Hatch, it's one of the tracks that I've been lucky enough to drive in real life, and you know, you just don't get the undulations in the game quite the same. But the way these cars are going to be going down the first bend there, they're already nervous on the back end to start off with, so that could be very interesting. But no, my favourite has to be Imola. What a legendary track, and it's so fast. Yeah, looking forward to Imola.
Yeah, I think for Imola, you're going to have to double the amount of push to passes you're allowed, because that'd be absolutely stunning to see the racing of these TT Cup cars. Well, thank you very much, Dave. And we're going to sign off sooner rather than later. But Steve, I think it was certainly one for the to watch back, especially for the drivers involved.
I think I'll certainly be watching those 2 races back, mate, just to sort of get their grip with what happened to the whole field, because obviously it was so easy to concentrate on what was in front of us. But I think there was quite a few battles going out throughout the field in both races, and as Dave touched on there, some really good fast drivers. Maybe just in second race they just need to sort of wind it down a little bit and just think about the whole race and a bit less contact, but nevertheless some great racing from all the drivers in both races.
Yeah, I think as spectators and commentators, we can just sort of focus on the fact that there's been really exciting racing, and we'll let the stewards deal with all the boring driving standard stuff, shall we? We'll just enjoy the fact that there was a 5-way battle for the race lead, and what a battle it was. It looks like we're sort of forming some almost favourites to go into the next round, but of course Brands Hatch GP, a very different circuit, is going to bring up some very different drivers to the forefront, and with a bit more practice we'll see some of the drivers in race 2 probably fighting for the sort of top 5, and maybe we'll be separated by less than a tenth of a second in the qualifying. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a harder track to get that perfect lap in, and I don't think Dave's going to get such a big gap. Maybe I may be wrong, but I think he'll do well to dominate qualifying like he dominated qualifying here tonight. Well, one thing's for sure, we thoroughly enjoyed everything that we saw. I hope that everybody at home enjoyed it as well. We are going to sign off for the evening because we're a touch over time. So from everyone here at sort of Simply Race Broadcasting and VRRC, we thank you very much for watching the stream and commenting. I've been Jack Oliphant along with Steve Proudley. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.